Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Blue Butterfly Effect podcast. I'm Ashley, and I'm here with Millie. And today, our topic is how our businesses can be a channel for our soul's expression. And I'm really excited about this conversation, but I'm even more excited because we have our first guest on. And not only is she a guest, I have chills. She is a soul sister. It's going to make me cry. She's been an incredible friend and an incredible support and guide for both my business and Millie's over the past year. And I will just say, I know we're going to dive more into this, but I have grown so much under her guidance and her reflection. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. Um, Her name is Patsy Kenney, and I'm going to let her introduce herself because she'll do a much better job than I could. So here's Patsy.
Oh, goodness. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. It is truly an honor to be with both of you today. So I call myself a creative concierge, a brand strategist, an ethnographic researcher, and a soulful intuitive. I work with a diverse range of humans, from corporate teams and leaders to individuals, and those embarking on new business ventures. Who need some road mapping and brand strategy and vision. I also support individuals at personal crossroads through soul to soul guidance. And I weave all of this together. And really, I think my primary role is to be a believing mirror for folks who are bringing their creative endeavors into the world and help them clarify, their goals and then set them up to take aligned action and really feel empowered to do so.
Mm. Yes, that was much better than I could have ever
Right.
done.
I totally thought that. I totally thought, yeah, she needed to do that because it's so beautifully put and it's all true. And I would add like more just
Yeah.
because the experience of working with you is it's so different than just working with someone who you're strategizing with and, uh, sharing ideas with. It doesn't feel so stiff. It feels like a soul conversation that your business can land on. And I think that when when you have a business, solopreneur, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it, it's such a to let people into that part of your world. Maybe it's your first time doing something like that, or you're a bit more of an introvert. It's such a vulnerable thing, right? It's such a vulnerable space to let someone into. And I've worked with other, brand strategists, and they've been great for where I've been, but working with you has just been so soul expanding.
Wow.
Truly.
Thank you both.
Truly.
It's truly
Yeah.
been an honor.
Yeah, it's been incredible. And I guess I would love to share why I started working with you. That might be a good place to start. Because I have felt like my creativity has been like stifled. It's been in my shadow for most of my life. Like I've always dreamed someday I'm going to be creative. Someday I'll be an artist. And I remember as a little girl, drawing things and doodling all the time. And even the way I wrote was like my own unique way, but being told you can't write like that, you can't do that, and just shutting it down and being told you're not the creative one, you're not that. And then I think it was last year, my like soul word was like creativity, and I just got a message that my soul was longing to be an artist. And I was like, but I can't do this alone. I can't explore my creativity alone because I won't be brave enough. I just think I just needed someone to mirror and reflect. And you were the first person. We hadn't worked together in this capacity. We'd known each other in like intuitive spaces, but I was like, Patsy, I need to check in with her and see if she'd be willing to do this with me. And you were like, yes. And I'm a different person in relationship to my writing, which I have been longing to connect with in a different way. So yeah, it's been life-changing.
I'm not even sure how to respond to that because
I know.
when you first reached out, it was so like an immediate yes. I think I have a background in branding and marketing and communications, but I think even further back in my orientation as a young person, I too had that bit of stifling, where like creativity was only celebrated through certain channels. It wasn't like fully celebrated. So I
Right.
think unconsciously, I've really been on this mission as I'm healing myself, right? To support others in that way, to be that believing mirror, to be able to say, like, yes, I see that in you, and look at the possibility of the impact you could have by leaning into that further, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot of that happens in our creative containers, where we also talk through different aspects of, okay, writing is the focus, but there's so many different ways in which that expression can reach the world, and what actually feels good to you in this now moment, knowing that things will evolve too, and that can shift, right?
Yes.
um, and so I think we just don't have enough people around us, generally speaking, who
Mhm.
are in our corner to provide that kind of feedback and support and celebration and accountability along the way. So it really lights me up that like this configuration of gifts, talents, abilities, life experience that I have, I get to bring to these spaces and support others in reflecting, and expressing their own light, their own
Yes.
unique expression.
Yes.
Yeah. It's I think you're totally right. We don't have a lot of people to reflect um the enthusiasm of our dreams back to us a lot of times,
Oh,
right?
that's a great way to put it. Yes.
Yeah, because working with you, and the way that you and I started working together, is it okay to share?
Yes, yes, of course.
Um, you came to me for coaching
That's right.
back at this point, like 3 years ago,
I was trying
maybe.
to figure that out.
Yeah, like
It is 3 years.
22.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and then I think through Ashley's network and through Ashley's intuitive circles, we kind of kept in touch, and then we kind of came again together again
Mhm.
late 2023,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
At the
Yes.
time that I was thinking about doing a revamp on my website. And I remember that prior to that, I had been thinking about doing a revamp on the website for quite some time. But
Mhm.
I kept running into the same type of energy uh,
Mm.
in working with people, that I was like, this isn't it. This isn't how I want to feel in doing this. I wasn't sure how I wanted to feel, but I knew that I didn't want to feel what I was feeling, which was, and this is nothing against anyone. I think that there are creators and uh, people who are really good at their craft that are just going to align with different people with different energy. My energy was really different at the time.
Mm.
And I just wanted to align with someone who felt like, no, I want this to be like a soul creation. And I don't even think I had words for it at that time. I just knew that I wanted to feel different. I didn't want it to feel so much like an exchange as much as a collaboration.
Totally.
Mhm.
And you and I came together, and it just kind of happened. It was
Mm.
something that kind of happened.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
told you, I shared with you, like, this is what I want to do. And I just went from there. And you have been someone who when you hold space in your container, I am able to share with you, like, my biggest, like, dreams and imagination and vision and ambition in about my business, about how I see myself, and about where I would like for it to go. And you just hold it with so much enthusiasm,
Mm.
and it's genuine, and it's like, for someone to love or to care for your dreams in that way, in the way
Mm.
that you might, that's really difficult to find.
Mm.
So thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Y'all are gonna get me teary-eyed before we even get started.
If my kids were here, they'd be like, y'all glazing Patsy, real.
You just taught me a new term, Ash.
Oh, you haven't heard that?
I
Not
It's
haven't heard.
you haven't?
No.
It comes from like you have a donut and then you put on the extra sugar. So they're always like Jasper calls Jake a dad glazer. You're always glazing dad. So we're glazing Patsy.
funny. I love
That's sweet.
That's really sweet. Oh, I love that. No pun intended.
No, it's so sweet. But you really hit on something, Millie. The feeling that you get when you're sitting with someone, it matters so much. And it reminded me of when I've been in circle with Patsy, or when I just initially met her. There's just like magic and a heightened energy and light and joy around her. And I was like, that's who I want sitting with me as I walk through the fears I have around my creativity. This is who I want to shine a light on my business in places where it feels very shadowy, or places like in me. And like you said, she is a wonderful place to share your ambitions. I also feel like I can tell her my deepest fears, and be like, this is my trauma around this. This is and you're not someone who's like, you're not working with me in a trauma space. I can do that myself, but I can say like, this is my trauma block around this, and you have the ability to like witness that as I walk through that. Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, then tie in all of the very technical knowledge around all of these things. I mean, this is like you are the whole package.
Yes.
And so I think we're sharing, I think it's important to know, right, for anyone listening, Patsy is a dear friend. She is a soul sister. And she's also incredibly talented and knowledgeable and intelligent and really fucking great at what she does.
Mhm.
Right? Because she has been doing this for a very long time in different scenarios. So this isn't just us like hyping her up. We want to do that, but she doesn't need us to do that. She's a badass. She's
Mhm.
really great at what she does. She's incredibly creative and always bringing in new ideas. And I think that as we keep moving, now I'm going to bring in the astrology a little bit.
Yeah.
As we move in more into the age of Aquarius, Aquarius is the energy in the zodiac that invites us, almost demands us to bring in our own unique genius into the world. So when we are being invited energetically to bring that into our work, into our business, right? That changes the dynamic and the relationship and the thought and the framework that we have around business and creativity, because it's no longer going to be just these cookie cutter follow steps 1 through 20 type of approach to your business, to your creativity, to your marketing, to any of that. It has to be unique. And I think that this is where Patsy's ability to connect intuitively and soul to soul with people, with clients, is so like that's the key as we move into how do I tap into my genius, versus just like being handed a questionnaire, and being like, here, fill this out, email it back to me when you're done. Like, what?
Yeah.
So if you could tell us a little bit more, Patsy, as to how that component uh, plays plays a role in the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for all of this. My brain is like buzzing. There's so many through lines that I'd love to tie in, but I think it is really enriching the experience, and what's gleaned from these sessions, um, that's able to be channeled back toward and around your brand, right? Through your brand. So each of us are a business owner, and what I wanted to touch on, Ashley, you named like how you felt, right? In this kind of creative container. Millie, you just did the same. So when we think about branding, the terms like branding and messaging and marketing, they all sort of get lumped together. And I promise this ties back to your question, Millie, but branding is really like how people feel about you, right? And so for me, like the unique expression that I bring into this work is that soulful piece where I can sit and start to utilize my intuition, the energy and essence that makes up who they are and what that unique expression is in the world. And we also draw from their unique talents, right? Your unique talents, your abilities, your life experience. How often I remind everyone that I'm working with, like, don't discount your life experience. That's the greatest experience of all. And I think coming out of, you know, the age that we've been in, where it's had been more tied to like credentials and what you have on paper and traditional, right, background in schooling and sort of a linear approach to success, or even proven methods, right? Like what worked for somebody else, oh, that's proven. It's not going to be necessarily something that works for you based on your own unique expression, right? And so remembering that, like, if you have somebody there to mirror back to you, how they're even experiencing you in that particular container is great influence and insight into how to package your messaging, right? To shape your messaging, which leads to your marketing. So messaging is how people understand and engage with you, and marketing is how people discover you. So kind of layering all those things together helps support generating eyes toward your brand, right? But it really starts inward. It starts with the inner circle too. Like, how are people already reflecting back to you in your waking life or in your inner circles, like how it's like to be with you, right? Their experience of sitting in space with you or sharing a conversation or a cup of coffee.
I'd never heard it put that way. It makes it so much more interesting to me. Like, I mean, when I'm just like marketing, blah. But when you say it like that, it's so personal and beautiful. And I see the importance of it. It's not cheapened. I feel like marketing you can feel so cheapened by it. Like, you have to do this and you have to do this and you have to post here and you have to do this. And then it just feels cheap and inauthentic. And then it feels like there's a lack of integrity. But when you put those words to it, I'm like, I'm there. I'm all for it. Like, it makes more sense.
It's so great because when you're there and all for it, energetically, that's transmitting to the folks that you want to connect with. Right? It's like there's a disconnect because we feel like we have to be a certain way or showing up a certain way or on even a certain platform, right? Based on what marketing research is out there. And I'm just like, every time I hear follow these 6 steps to develop your 6-figure business, I want to vomit. I'm like, yes, there's frameworks, absolutely, that support getting your message out there into the world. But if you're not clear, firstly, on who you are, and this is why I love talking with the two of you, because you really support, and this podcast is all about self-knowledge, right? Utilizing astrology and intuitive guidance or intuitive knowing, the psycho-spiritual approach to understanding oneself. Like, that to me is the biggest key, like, to success in business, is self-knowledge. Because once you're aware of who you are, how you are, what makes you unique and different, and you lean into those things, you can start like utilizing that as a filtering system, not only for your brand and like, okay, this is how I make people feel, and then leading to the messaging, but what's really lighting me up right now in this moment that I want to put my energy and attention to, and then outsource the other things, right? It's like, I know for me too, like getting bogged down in the weeds of like formatting stuff or editing, I'm like immediately my energy is just like sucked right out of me. So that's not the place where I'm going to dedicate most of my energy. Sure, some of it's required to run this business, admin things required, but at a certain point, I'm going to be outsourcing those things to people who get super lit up by those tasks, right? Because that's their own part of their own unique blueprint. For me, it's engaging in conversations like this. It's creating some content. Ash, right now, I know, if I may, for you, writing is really lighting you up. And Millie, you have a new idea that's really sparked you. So you're putting your energy toward that. And maybe you're not outwardly talking about it yet, but you've got time dedicated toward thinking about how that will take shape. And so when we start to lead our businesses from this intuitive space and recognizing, again, having that self-knowledge to use that as a filtering system for decision making, it not only brings so much more joy to the everyday for us as individuals leading these businesses, but it genuinely connects on a resonant level with those that we really want to serve.
Yeah. One of, one of the things that I really enjoy about working with you is that it has allowed, for instance, that new idea that's surging right now about a program that I want to share later on this year, is that you have created this space for play and imagination, and let's talk and and see what's going on, right? And I think that's important because one of the things that you have mentioned before is that your business is a channel of your soul's expression, right? And so I think that our human experience, as it evolves, it shows us from season to season what our soul needs to experience at that particular season in time, right? And so, one of the things that I have personally had a lot of trouble with, and also like a lot of resistance around, it's, and I hate the fucking word, it's niche, like niching down, right? And
Wait, what does that mean? What does that mean?
can you explain what a niche is, Patsy,
It
please?
means getting really narrowly focused on a certain segment of the market, or like who you're showing up for, or what you're offering. And I am of the mindset that when we bring our whole selves and aspects of our whole selves to whatever we're creating, that it's so much more rich, right? And then it keeps us boxed in. I think it keeps us boxed in when we're like super niching down. But when you're,
Yes.
like out there in the research, it's like, well, niche down to get the most impact, have the most impact, because it's easier to talk about when you're talking about one thing,
Right.
but it keeps us as individuals, as business owners, like boxed in. It kind of prevents us from evolving, or it gives us I think maybe where you're headed with this, Millie, is like there's a mindset and judgment around like the evolutionary, natural evolution of who we are and where we are season to season, or what's lighting us up the most right now.
Yeah.
Like for Ash, it's a season of writing. Amazing. What that yields by the end of the year, we don't know yet. But like how exciting to be leaning into that. And maybe next year there will be something else that she wants to focus on.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so I think I'm fortunate that I'm an astrologer and that can be a niche, right? But if I were talking to someone who approaches um like marketing or any of this work in a more traditional way, they would ask me to niche down even more. And
Totally.
I would run for the hills. I don't like to be boxed in. What's true for me right now is going to be the thing that I'm going to speak of the most honestly and easefully. And I think that for me, as someone who has been working for herself for 5 years, took the leap from the corporate world, the thing that I have focused on is what is the easiest way to do all of this?
Mm-hmm.
Because it comes with so much already,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I have to like be in a box, I just feel caged.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that again, we're entering a time in which the acceptance of our wholeness is
Yeah.
going to be normalized, I think.
Mm,
How exciting.
yes. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
exciting. And this way of working leaves room for, I mean, I'll say, Millie, I think you do too. And I know you do, Patsy. We have a bit of rebellious hearts. Like our hearts are rebellious. Our humans are rebellious. We do not like to be boxed in. And just got so tired of like, you should do this, you should do that, you need to do this, you need to do that. I was like, no, if it doesn't feel right or good, I don't want to do it. I don't have time for it. I don't want to do it. I want to be in integrity. And that's something I love about working this way because I get to stay in my integrity. I get to evolve as I need to. And there's no self betrayal in this process. I'm never doing something that feels like sometimes I'll take steps outside my comfort zone for sure,
Sure.
always doing that. But there's a difference between self betrayal and like nudging yourself, just being a
Gosh, yeah.
little more courageous this time and knowing the difference. So when someone tells you you should do this and telling the difference between self betrayal and when I'm being courageous and growing, I don't think a lot of people know that difference.
Well, may I ask, Ash,
Yes.
can you describe how to know the difference? Like what's the discernment on that? Because one thing that I do find I prioritize is supporting people with a breadth of options for how they may approach a creative problem, and
Mm,
then really prompting them to say, okay, feel into that and
mm,
what feels most alive for you. And but there's been times like I remember Millie at one point it's just like your energy just dropped out with something I had suggested. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I just remember being like, okay, let's talk about what's going on there. And then we ended up finding our way to an entirely different solution. And by the end of the call, you were like elevated again. So So there's this like scale that I always say, I'm never going to recommend something that doesn't feel aligned for you. Right. Because I think, especially as business owners, like you just said, so much comes with it already, right, Millie? But as business owners, when we continue to take action out of alignment, that's where the burnout comes in. So Ash, just back to you, like out of integrity, or if I'm betraying myself, like how do I know if I'm an individual on my path forging it as a business owner? How do I know in my body what is in integrity and what is not?
So, what does self betrayal feel like? I mean, I feel like when someone's asking you to do something that doesn't feel right, it's that drop of energy. Exactly. It's like that, oh, that does not feel good. I have no energy moving towards that idea. It's not necessarily scary. It's just like knowing your no. Um,
Yeah.
and when something feels in integrity and alignment, there's a life to it. You know, I know my no is really flat. And then sometimes I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sure. I need to sit with it, but there's possibility there. There's energy, you know. But then I know, like they say, hell yes, it's very alive. You know, my body's excited about that. Even when I'm scared, my body's like, ooh, that sounds exciting. There's going to be some growth to get there. But it's that energy drop. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. It's just shut down. Shades closed, shades down.
So I think that, so if anyone's listening, right, and they're either they run their own business already or they're thinking about starting something, you know, obviously and rightfully so, one of the main concerns is how am I going to make money? Right? I
Yeah.
got to I got to make money because if you have a business, that is a component that needs to be taken into account, right? Now, I think that even the approach to that is shifting, and the way that we are aligning with making money, and I think that we're moving into a space of for not for everybody is more, right? So what I mean by that is that, I mean, I'll share my personal experience. It's I have lived a life in accordance to the means of what my business has brought me, and I've been happy with that because it has afforded me spaciousness. It has afforded me other things that are important to me, right? Does that mean that that's where it's going to stay? No. Again, I go back to we go through seasons, and I think that's a huge lesson in business, that it's okay to go through seasons. Because I think, especially if you come from like a corporate environment, it's like, no, every quarter you have to make more. Every year you have to make more. And if you made less a year, if you made less in a year than you made the previous year, then somehow something's wrong. Somehow you're failing. And that's not true at all. Personally, the way that I measure at the end of the year when we have to do taxes and the whole thing is, especially at this point, is what did I do with my days? How did it feel? Was I like able to spend time at the park in the sun with my dog? Because that to me feels great. And I am not
Absolutely.
about to say that I'm a failure for that, or that if I made a little bit less money or if I made a little bit more money. Like, no, it's about how did I feel? What did I learn? So one of the things, a term that I feel that you coined, uh, Patsy, is a return on your intuition versus a return on your investment. And I love that because I think that speaks to more like intuitive, conscious entrepreneurs like Ashley and I.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that there are a lot of people out there like that. So what does that mean, and how does that then you feel translate into actually making a living from your business?
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting is so often business owners are sort of conditioned, to your point, of asking, like, what's the return on my investment? Right. And it's like, that's what kind of came to me recently. It was like, well, what if we shifted that and asked the question, what's the return on our intuition? Because you're always going to get a return when you lead with your intuition. Like growth is inevitable, right?
Mhm.
Like to your point, the outcome might not look exactly what you expected. So maybe you had a money goal and you didn't quite reach it. But then what were the other benefits that came with the way that you interacted with your days? And that is also a measure of success. One of the things I work with people around as we're developing or refining their brand is like, and it comes to goals, like how do you want to be showing up in your business every day? Like what is an ideal day? What is an ideal week to you? How are you spending your time? That helps you influence like how you're making decisions, and back to what are you outsourcing, or how can you, you know, even from a business model standpoint, leaning more towards one-on-one versus group versus, if you're a service provider, there's so many ways to get to where you might want to go. But if you're not clear on what is a success, what is an ideal day, then you're creating for the sake of creating, but not making impact. So again, like looking at this ROI as return on intuition, growth is inevitable. Um, the like what may seem safe or proven or what have you from some other model doesn't always shape up that way. And then we're left with kind of a bit of a disdain, right? So if we were leaning into our intuition instead, like we get to yield growth every single time. And then I think there's another aspect to that, which is, well, how do we start building an intuitively led practice? And that does come with creating spaciousness. So those walks with Jack are actually like so beneficial to your
Right.
business and your brain space and your creativity, you know?
Yeah. I've always admired how Ashley has had like how long have you had your practice? Like 20 years?
Oh my gosh, yes.
And that to
About
me,
that, 19, yeah.
yeah, to me that has always been fascinating to know about you because I think you very much lead an intuitive practice.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I do. I do. I always have. I didn't know that I was doing that at the beginning, but now I do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing a little bit of like what that has looked like, what that has evolved into, the trust that comes with having a business and running a business in that way? Because I think, again, that's so important.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I first, becoming a therapist is something that was a piece of my soul, to be of service in that way is a calling. I knew it pretty early on. And so it's easy to build a business around something that means so much to you, and there's a reciprocity when you have a business that is soul led because there's an evolution in healing. It's not only of service to whoever is using your business or it's in service to, but it also is in service to you. So there's this reciprocity. If you don't feel that reciprocity, I think it's good to kind of take stock or like re-examine what's going on with your business because it will feed you as you feed others, no matter what it is. And I'm going back to that rebellious heart. I don't like to do anything I don't want to do. So if it doesn't feel good, and I'm saying I do the dishes, I do the laundry, like I'm not talking about that, but I don't want to spend time doing something that's not meaningful, it doesn't have purpose, doesn't excite me. And in this field I'm at, there's just endless growth opportunity, right? Endless growth. There's constant things to learn, to expand. And so um, I feel like even at the beginning, when people were like, there's thousands of therapists in New York City, you're never going to make it. And I just kind of sat with, but there's only one me, and there has to be a reason I'm called to this. So let's just see what happens. Right. And I was clueless. I wish I could say, oh, I was so intuitive and wise. I was completely ignorant to what I was doing. But I just kind of knew, like, I'm not going to buy into that nonsense. Um, and then I just let it come in. And it just feels like I keep doing that. I kind of follow what excites me and what my soul says, let's do this next. And right now, my soul is like, time to write. It's time to write and write and write. And the growth that has taken me to get to the place where I'm willing to sit in the chair and write and believe in myself and share it, that's been part of my process. But I think that going back to what you asked, I think just along the way, it's always asking, does this feel like something I want to show up for? Does this feel in alignment with me? Is this in integrity with me? Um, does it excite me? And then I can always feel that in my body. And I remember Lara years ago, he was like, it was back when you had cards. We didn't have websites. This is how old I am. And it was like everyone had cards, right? No one had a website. And Lara was like, we should really get on marketing. And I just heard marketing's not going to be for y'all. It's not going to work. And so we did the cards. No one took the cards. I had boxes and boxes of cards, but it was word of mouth. And that's what really, like, I listened and I knew that. And it's always worked for me that way, that going back to what Patsy said, and both of you have always been reflections of like what it feels like to be in my present, is that it's how people feel in my presence is what has been my card or my website or my social media. And I want to go to something that Patsy always says, and I'm not going to say it right. So I want you to take it from here once you know what I'm about to say, is that it's not about having so many followers. Like you say, it's not about having thousands and thousands of followers. It's even if you have 100, it's that are loyal and take it from here because you'll take it better.
Yeah. You're giving me chills because I would even argue, especially when you're starting out, it's having one. It's having one true believer. It's having one true fan.
Believer.
You know, there is a blog post turned book called 1,000 True Fans. And the concept is like, all you need is 1,000 true fans to have a successful business. And I would argue that it really starts with one, and that word of mouth is exactly it. Like, do not discount, word of mouth marketing. It's the absolute best kind of marketing you could ever do, because think about that too. Like, built-in trust is there. So you say to Millie, right, Ashley, you're like, hey, I just found that, or like, I'm using this new product. I freaking love it. And it does this X, Y, and Z for me. And Millie is immediately like, if her needs match what this product just solved for you, there's built-in trust there. She's gonna be like, I totally wholeheartedly, accept that Ashley's gonna throw a good recommendation my way, and she's gonna go buy that thing. And so I think we often are sort of oriented, especially as we start out in business, like, okay, we got it right. The making money thing piece, as you mentioned, Melly, is like, well, we do have to make money. And this is my thing where I believe like business is a channel for our soul's expression. So if we focus on that, we go back to the self-knowledge, we have awareness of how people feel in our presence, like letting that be the calling card, right, leads to money. But the marketing can be so natural, because if you serve somebody in a way that, you're showing up intentionally, you're showing up like being really present with that exchange, really thoughtful about the touch points you have with that person, it builds their trust. It creates that reciprocity. They're so excited about the experience they had with you that they're going to go share it with people. So that one person knows 10 people. Those 10 people know 10 more people. And here we are at the guy's 1,000 true fan theory, right?
Right.
We don't have to look outward and try to attract people in. It's like, turn inward, recognize what your gifts, your reflection is, the way you work with people is, lean into that, and then trust. And I love too, Ashley, you always say like, spirit is my employer, right? So like this reciprocity piece not only works with each other humans in our circle, but from like that source energy space too, right? We're co-creating along with source. We're also like, our businesses have their own unique energy too. Like working with that as like, okay, what's most alive in me right now? I'm going to focus on that. How is then my business in turn kind of responding energetically to what I'm putting out, right? And then the next layer is the people who are connecting with it, engaging with it.
Yeah, and I want to go to the money piece for a moment, because I think it's important. I don't think any of us, when we start off our businesses, I think it's important to ask, what am I willing to do to support this business as it grows, like to bring in income? So I don't want to give anyone this idea that we're just sitting at home and I'm waiting for the clients to, I waitressed, I did human resources until I could, what was I willing to do to grow the thing that I loved that meant so much to me? And that's a really important part of it. And I think it's important to filter out, okay, what am I not willing to do? And what am I willing to do to support this dream? I also want to address the expectations we put on our dreams. And in this world where, with social media, it's such a weird world where everybody dreams of being famous, right? Like there was a time before all this that people were just artists, people were teachers, people were farmers, people were just whatever they did or wanted to do. I'm not saying either is bad or good, but I think from the way our culture is right now, like someone with a dream, immediately the dream explodes into millions of money, famous, millions of followers, and it's like when we put that kind of expectation on our dream and like let our inner critic pound away at that dream, the dream's going to go away. It's going to get really flat. And so I think it's important to focus on it's not about the outcome, it's how much you love doing it. Like what lights you up? What's your growth? Because whatever's meant for you will come as you nurture that, right? Like and so I just see so many people go, well, I don't want like just I don't want to work one on one, or I don't want to work, that's not big enough. And I get that, but you got to start somewhere. And that has to have meaning. And I've said this before, everyone you touch, again, like they share that with someone else, or it affects the way they move through their life. So really be mindful of your expectations you're putting on your dream. Is there a timeline? And is it giving you the chance to meet your dream where you need to be to take it to the next level?
Right. I think this is where one of the thoughts that has come to me over the last couple of years is like the redefining of the doing, the redefining of like the constant doing. Because to your point, Ash, it's not like we're just sitting around doing nothing.
Right.
Even in the moments of spaciousness and slow, in a slow season, for instance, where we are moving slowly, we are moving more mindfully, that is a doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are redefining doing from the perspective of we have to take it to a very simple example, right? Like posting every single day, making sure that we send something out every single day, or whatever every single day looks like in the way that today's world has portrayed like having a business being.
Yeah.
It's like I very quickly realized, oh, I'm falling into the same rat race. When I left corporate America and started my own business, I'm like, I'm falling into the same thing, and this is exactly what I don't want. And
Mm-hmm.
it takes a minute to kind of uncondition yourself, and that's also something else that I believe that there is a lot of inner work as an individual that goes into also sustaining an intuitively led business, right? Because again, there are things that you do have to do, right? What am I going to do? What actions am I going to take to see the flourishing of this creative endeavor so that I can actually live from it?
Mm-hmm.
And but everything we're talking about is coming back to self. Everything we're talking about is actually knowing how to be empowered from a soul and source space and connection so that you understand where you're being led, as opposed to feeling like I have to do all of these things to be successful, otherwise I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we begin to look at business as a soul expression, it's about who you become in the process.
So
It's
true.
about the growing. And I think we have completely forgotten as a society that if you remain true and honest to that, if you continue coming back to your soul, which is a practice, by the way, this isn't about not doing anything. It's about why are you doing the things that you're doing? What's the intention behind the things that you're doing?
Yeah.
Then you will get a return on that. But it's about completely reframing the way that you're moving in the world, the way that you're seeing yourself, the way that you think about business.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different thing that in the eyes of the society that we live in might look like very, very slow growth. And I personally am in no hurry, especially to impress people I don't know.
It's like these arbitrary, right, targets and that conditioning. It's so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Um, Oh, you made so many good points, Millie. Yeah. I'm on the slow growth train too. Or like I used to have some reflections around in the area of marketing, I supported business owners with live events, workshops, and retreats. And the idea was to bring people into your space so they could get a feel for who you are and how you work, right? And that could have taken place over, a couple of hours or a long weekend, depending on, the event and the goal behind it. But I had one client reflect back to me at the time, like, oh, what you're saying about this long game approach really proves to be true. They reached back out to me about 18 months after a weekend long event, and that an attendee who had shown up in that container with the business owner, 18 months prior, ended up booking like a $40,000 contract with them. And at the time, I remember the client sort of being like, oh, that wasn't the outcome I expected from a monetary perspective. But then, right, that investment, not only in self and putting themselves out there and connecting with their audience, but that investment in the people in the room, like left that lasting impact, that impression that led to impact in their business a couple years down the line. And when that person was ready, they were ready. There wasn't any sort of, right, like friction or resistance in creating that booking. It was already there. It had been built. The seed had been planted. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of amplify the slow growth thing. I think we forget how impactful it can be. And because we're wired, the conditioning tells us it should be faster, like executional,
Right.
immediate.
There's something really sacred about, and this is something that I personally had to really like, it dawned on me one day, like, no, you do not celebrate any amount of money you've made in your business. Whatever you consider big or small, you do not celebrate it, because that is something that came from an idea that you had, that you put out in the world, and someone exchanged something for it. That's magic. Like that.
Totally.
Do you understand?
And the more we focus on that, right? The more emphasis we put towards celebrating those mini micro milestones, like the more room there is to receive, right?
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The thing that's coming up for me right now as I think about that too is, again, when we have our focus on money and outcome, oftentimes it's really broad. It's like we have in our head some arbitrary number that we want to reach.
Mm-hmm.
But if we really sat down and mapped out containers for where that money will go, like, I bet it doesn't even meet the number we think we need in order to live the life that we really want to live. And the fulfillment factor that comes from looking at our business as a channel for soul expression is just like infinite when we lean into our strengths, when we lean into our gifts, when we lean into what's lighting us up. Because that exchange, like you said, Ashley, like the reciprocity is there, but there's that like rejuvenation that comes from being in our gifts and sharing them with the world, and the growth that's happening because we're evolving along with it, like in the practice of sharing what those gifts are. That's fulfilling on its own. Then you add the monetary exchange, and it's like, now we're really off to the races. Like that's ultimate success to me.
And when you celebrate, like Millie's saying, you also take a moment and you have gratitude for the person that paid for your service, that paid for your dream, that was willing to take an hour, a couple hours or weeks out of their own money that they're, deciding what to do with. And then that energy is like fueled, like gets bigger and bigger when you're like appreciating your dream, you're appreciating their time and their investment in you. And then you're dreaming up where you want to put this energy. It just gets bigger and bigger. It's more alive.
And then in turn, you get to invest money that's coming into you, into other people's dreams and other people's products, right? Like, and that's how this whole Yeah, I think it
Isn't that
works.
much more exciting than like how how stale, like the money exchange can be now? Like I don't think we see, like if I go get my hair done, that's that person's art. That's their service. That's their gift, someone that's like making pastries or coffee or whatever it is. Like if we thought about that a little bit more, if we personalized that exchange a little bit more, that would be so beautiful. Yeah.
I always say I love giving my esthetician my money. Like I will for as long as I can and forever and ever give her my money every single month because she's an artist and she makes my skin look pretty and she runs her own business. Like it just there's joy in that. And I think that's another I think that's another not just reframe but redefinition, like soul redefinition that is important to make around like what the exchange of money is,
Mhm.
right? The energy of money, the energy of your business. Because if we're talking about this from a soul perspective and space, in that space, everything and everyone is free. Nothing can be like clutched onto. And if you attempt it, then there's love lacking there, or there is like fear is taking over faith.
Mhm.
And not that that's a bad thing. This isn't about labeling things good or bad, but it is information. And the way that we have been conditioned to think about business and money and exchange is very stale. It's very just purely transactional,
Transactional.
Mhm.
Yes.
uh,
Mhm.
and again, not from a soul space,
Mm-mm.
And so I don't doubt that so many more people are going to take the leap to work for themselves and create for themselves. But if we are trying to take like the mindset and the framework of the old world, it's not going to work because the collective calling is to go inward in every aspect of your life.
Yes.
And that requires trust and surrender, but that trust and surrender can only come from continuously coming back to yourself.
Right.
Yes.
Mhm.
So another thing that I think is important to name is that, I mean, I've experienced this myself on and off in the last 5 years, that there are moments that having a business for myself can feel very lonely. And which is why I've joined communities or, um, been in a container like with Patsy, or even Ashley and I have created space to like kind of connect on our own creative projects. Um, but can you talk a little bit on how you find those people along the way that are aligned, not just because they have a business, right? Because I've met a lot of people who work for themselves, and there's no way that I would spend any amount of time with them. Like we have nothing in common. So how do you find like those soul connections, those soul people as you have, as you run your own business?
Yeah. Would you like me to take that first?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I love this question. And I really struggled as I came back into working for myself. There was a period of time where I ran a boutique brand agency with two others. And I loved that time of my career because it was built in sounding board every day, and our creativity was always flowing. And we had that opportunity to reflect things, bounce things off of one another. And we brought our own unique expressions into that space. And so when I came back into being in business for myself, I had that moment of like, ooh, it can be isolating. I want to create something that feels connective, that maybe on the outside it doesn't look like I am still a business owner of one. I don't have a team of people that I'm paying to support me, but in fact it feels even more expansive to have found beautiful soul friends like you along the way. And how did I recognize that that was a match? It really was like a frequency feeling. There was built-in trust that happened along the way. Like, it didn't happen overnight. We had several exchanges. We had started working with each other in different capacities. It sort of like evolved over time. But there was like a shared value system. I like the language we were speaking was very resonant with one another. There were topics that we'd float back and forth to one another before we were even really consciously creating a container for, hey, I've got this idea. Can I run it by you as it relates to my business? Right. So there was a level of support that we were sharing with one another beyond the lens of business. I think it expanded into different pieces of our life pie as well, right? To be able to share space for one another as we're moving through something else, maybe a transition in our lives versus what, but it's all connected, right? Like the way we show up in our life is the way we show up in our business. And all of that should be taken into consideration too. But in terms of creating sort of like, it's like the almost like the secret boardroom, really. It's like starting to pay attention to conversations you're having with people or that kind of vibrational connection you have with others who are in your circle or cross your path that have shared belief systems, though unique experiences in life that can add different perspectives, because that's really valuable too, right? I like to say like-hearted versus like-minded per se. So we have different points of view on things, but can deliver that kind of feedback in a loving manner. I think it's a long way around it, but it's a feeling. It's like just being attuned again with oneself, what your own values are, how you're moving through the world, and like what would be beneficial or what am I craving? And then having the courage to kind of like put it out there. And thinking about years ago before I was in the container of running a boutique branding agency, I was in business for myself to start. And a friend who, well, a really new friend on my path reached out via email and she's like, hey, I got a great energy from you when we met at this a conference a couple weeks back. Would you be willing to have coffee and then consider being like my accountability partner for the next several months? We did that for well over a year. We met every Friday for coffee and we went over like our business goals. And that was such an integral person on my path to support my business growth and my self-development at the time, because there was this shared like experience of running a business, and we were very new on our paths of running businesses on our own. So we were like learning things alongside one another and we were sharing resources in that way. So I think there has to be sort of a shared, you know, place in time in which you are too, that's like supportive of your growth and building that path of connection so it feels less lonely.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a big like indicator for me is, who do I feel safe sharing my dreams with?
Oh, such a good one.
Yeah.
Like that's a big one for me. Who do I feel safe sharing my dreams with?
And who
Right.
celebrates me, right? I think that's
Yeah.
to that point, Millie.
So big.
Like if somebody I'm, kind of like tentatively sharing my dreams with, like I'm like,
Mhm.
just putting it out there a little bit, maybe not the full dream, just like teasing it out, and I get feedback that's like cutting me down or diminishing that dream, then that's a no.
That's a no.
Right.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
You, Ash.
Well, yeah, that and somebody who's willing to share their dreams in return, like that reciprocity of them willing to be vulnerable in that space. So I'm not the only one sitting in the vulnerability, of like, I'm trying this, I'm excited about this, I'm doing this. And I think one of the things I've talked with clients going back to the loneliness, um, who feel like it can be hard for them to do certain tasks or certain things or feel inspired. This is how I feel sometimes with writing, where I just wish somebody's energy was in the room so it didn't feel alone. So I'll like go in the same room as my husband or my kids or something. So there's just something for me that's there. And just wanted to share the idea of like this person who can do this with you. They don't have to be working on the same thing, but they can know your dreams and they can know what you're working on and they can be working on something different. But having that energy tether between you is so supportive and can help you focus, can help you stay present with the stuff that you're trying to work on or explore. But yeah, if somebody's willing to be in the vulnerability, then I'm like, cool. But I don't want somebody who's just cheerleading me the whole time and not like sharing any part of themselves. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's something
It's
really
such a
meaningful about that.
absolutely. It's such a healing experience.
Mhm.
Um,
It is.
it's such a healing experience to be in space. At least it has been for me to be in space with the two of you in a creative way,
Yeah.
right? And to be celebrated and to be supported and to be held and to have feedback. And
Yes.
I say that because for anyone listening, I think it's important that you know that that is out there.
Yeah.
It's out there. And I say that additionally because for me, one of I guess my core wounds, or one of the things that I've had to work through and overcome, is like not trusting people or not trusting women, or and again, this is such a vulnerable thing. This is such a vulnerable space that your people are out there, but it does require for you to go inward first and let it come. Like, let it come when it's meant to.
Yeah.
Like, keep
Yes.
moving slowly, steadily, keep coming back to yourself. And those people will show up.
Yeah.
They will.
And
Yeah.
like holding that intention, right? Not knowing where that's going to come in. But again, it's like setting that intention, high intention, low attachment, like
Mm.
Oh, I love that.
who
Attention,
and
love,
how
attachment.
who and how it's coming, right? You don't know, but that's kind of the magic of it too. But now your lens is toward like the possibility of this person or small number of people showing up on your path.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of be feeling into that. Like maybe that would be a good match, or again, incrementally getting to know that person and feel into, is that shared vulnerability there? Is that reciprocity there? Is that shared celebration there? I mean, I can look to the two of you and share wins that are like, might be, again, have a little bit of stickiness if I'm sharing it with someone else who isn't in their own inner work, in their own inner power, in their own journey toward self-expression through business, right? And I know that it's safe to share it there, and that it will be held with great care and celebration. And when there's something for me to look at, I can trust that the two of you will reflect that back to me in a loving way too. Like, like shifting my perspective, helping me shift my energy. Like, it's not all rainbows and butterflies all the time. There's shadow there to be unpacked as well. So I'm really grateful that we've found our way to this place in our friendship and our co-creation and collaboration, and just really honored to be in your orbit.
Me too.
Same.
Yeah, same. This is just so good. And I learned a lot. I mean, I just wrote down high attention, low attachment. I think I could go on and learn more and more. So thank you so much for everything you shared and for everything that you have been to each of us. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. May this episode be of service to anyone out there who is thinking about venturing out on their own, or is thinking about changing their approach to their business. And reach out to Patsy. Have a session with her, especially if you've never had a session like that. Have a session with her. Have that experience. Feel what it's like to approach business, right? Even that word is a little loaded. Your practice, your creative expression in this way, and realize how expansive that actually can be.
Yeah. And we'll include how to contact you, Patsy, in our episode notes. But her website is patsykenny.com. Anything else you want to add about how people can find you?
I am growing my activity on Instagram, and that handle is Patsy Kenney. And LinkedIn as well. That's my next place to show up and share.
Kenney is Kenney.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Is that a wrap?
That's
Thank
it.
y'all. Okay. We'll be talking to y'all soon. Thank you so much for listening and watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button and hit that notification bell to be updated on new videos.
Click the video on screen to watch more episodes.